On May 9th, 2025, the pilot for what would become a hit show all around the world, the pilot that has been lost for 40 years, the pilot that so many people put their energy and love into making, and most of all, the pilot that had jump-started the television series responsible for my childhood, was found. My friends, on May 9th, 2025, the pilot for Thomas and Friends, named Down the Mine, was found. As part of the 80th anniversary of the Railway series, the folks at Mattel have gone all out to bring us this long-lost pilot, completely restored and released to the world. Today, we're going to take a look at the history of this pilot, the subsequent search into it, and a review of it with my thoughts, ending it all off with my own celebration of 80 years of the Railway series by talking about how this pilot is an important piece of found media. So with that being said, sit back, relax, grab a snack, drink some water, celebrate, and get cozy, because today, we're talking about the found pilot for Thomas and Friends, Down the Mine. Let's start with a real brief overview. The Railway series was a series of books that began back in May of 1945, and this year is the 80th anniversary of these books. Mattel is doing all sorts of stuff like new merchandise to celebrate, folks at Playrail released this exclusive Thomas, and Tally Klin is celebrating the next Audrey extravaganza, which I'm sure will have even cooler stuff. In 1983, it was decided that Britt Allcroft, partnered with Clearwater Studios, would take a crack at making a television adaptation of the series. Now, the series had been attempted for a television adaptation before, an ill-fated BBC adaptation in the 50s, a scrapped musical version by Andrew Lloyd Webber in the 70s, but this one was different. Britt Allcroft was extremely dedicated to this project, and the crew at Clearwater helped make it happen. By mortgaging her house, she was able to afford all the necessary equipment to create a pilot episode in hopes of getting the project greenlit. Custom-made models were created for this pilot, and the crew made small sets and used Pico brand track for the pilot. There was no score for the pilot, however the crew scored big time when Beatles star Ringo Starr took up the helm as narrator. The pilot was produced, albeit there were various complications along the way. The models didn't run too well on the track, and at some points had to be pulled along with fishing wire. The steam mechanisms were all sorts of janky, and at some points you could actually see steam leaking from their eyes. All in all though, despite these minor inconveniences, the pilot was greenlit by the folks at ITV, and thus Thomas and Friends began next year on October 9th, 1984. Here we are, just 42 years after the production of this pilot, and man, this has been an interesting ride. Over just the past 5 years, I've put out 2 videos detailing my research into this pilot episode. In these few years, I can confidently say after watching the pilot, wow, we got a lot of info wrong, but we also got a lot of info right. The fun thing about a search for something produced 40 years ago is how it becomes one big game of telephone. In my initial search for this pilot, I spoke to Britt Allcroft herself, and she told me Ringo narrated the pilot and Mike O'Donnell and Junior Campbell did the score. Now, this was interesting because Mike told me himself that they didn't know music for the pilot, and Rick Sigelco claims that Ringo wasn't the narrator of the pilot. One big game of telephone out in the schoolyard because not too many people are keen to remember all the details to something produced so long ago. And of course, we haven't even mentioned the fact that nobody brought up the failed O-scale models of the engines they attempted. I like to think that I'm very respectful when it comes to these searches, as everyone I've talked to, I always reinforce that it's okay if you can't remember, don't worry about it. I'm not expecting you to remember every detail, especially not after 40 years. Luckily for me, I got my hands on a production log leading up to the series 1 of the show that was written all the way back in 1982, which details the production schedule of the pilot as well. So instead of playing telephone, I used this to determine information regarding the production of it. Over the recent years, Mattel dug out the old reels that contained the pilot episode from their vault and restored them for fans to celebrate the 80th anniversary. Among these reels was the original narration that Ringo Starr did for the pilot. Ian McHugh, who handled the whole operation, called up Mike O'Donnell to compose a score for the pilot's release. Using the recovered footage, Ringo's original narration, old sound effects they dug out of the archive, and O'Donnell's score, a pilot episode was restored and ready for release, which would hit the internet on May 9th, 2025. Let's take a look and I'll share my thoughts and comparisons with the info we had leading up to this. Right off the bat, they show off some behind-the-scenes footage. We get to see them adjusting the face masks, the takes they used in the show, and text flashes on screen giving additional context about their reconstruction of this pilot. We also get this amazing score by Mike O'Donnell, created specifically for this pilot. The episode starts at Lower Tidmouth, and we can immediately tell the difference with the Thomas model. Look at that face. Wow. He has a completely clear running board, no headlamp or lamp irons, so keep this in mind. Gordon shuffles in with some trucks, and it's so nice to see the complete Gordon model now. Like, wow. His extremely sloped running board is just so funny. And man, the faces they made for him are so expressive. The scene plays out just like how it does in the final episode, but it's just so nice seeing the pilot models interact. There's a quick recycled bit that they put into the final episode, and Thomas pulls off. This part is really interesting though, as they repurposed a scene from the final series into this place. You can tell it's the final series by some key differences, the first being Thomas's lamp and lamp irons. His running board isn't empty, and the scene they used is for the final show's intro. I believe this is where that image that I was sent last year fits into this, and it's unfortunately very likely that the original film for the scene was either lost or too decayed to restore, meaning that this behind the scenes photo is the only surviving proof of its existence. Crazy world. I love this close-up shot of the Knapford signal box. I can't really tell you why though, it looks cool. Thomas left the coaches at the station and went off to a mine for some trucks. This is where we see the iconic footage of the pilot, and that was repurposed into the final episode. The early set of the lead mines is so cool. In the finalized series, the sets often had like a house or tiny building or something off to the side to really show that it was a realistic railway with people running it. But in these early sets, there's just no buildings. It's just a silly old board and the two lines and some rail clutter and like a tiny little workman's shed, versus like the mine in the final episode had like this big things. Thomas puffs past the danger board, and you can tell that his model is really struggling here on the track. These front upwards angles of Thomas makes you kind of tell how weird his proportions are. There are these nice close-ups of Thomas's crew as he moves forward to go past the danger sign. We get this close-up of his whistle, and that is not the sound it's supposed to make. Now, I really like how they did this crash into the mine for this scene. I love seeing the ground fall out from under the track. Thomas falls into the mine, and the Fat Controller comes to see him. They decide Gordon will pull him out. Gordon's winch has this close-up shot that I don't think we've ever seen before. We get close-ups that were used in the final episode. Gordon pulls Thomas from the mine, and the two decide to form an alliance. And the two allies puff home, buffer to buffer. And that's the pilot. While it's the same story as the final episode, getting to see the actual film they made using these early models is so much fun. And it's really interesting that despite this being their earliest model attempt from the Clearwater, this footage still holds up in 2025. I mean, there really wasn't ever a point where I was like, yeah, this is bad. There are minor nitpicks people may have, like the steam or the janky models, but hey, it's a pilot and it served its purpose. All in all together, I think I would have greenlit this pilot. So let's talk about the info we had before and compare it to what we know now. This is the part of the video where I talk about all of the misinformation I have spread online. So right off the bat, in the last video I did, I talked about a female narrator. I do not know where I got this info. I remember someone asked me for a source where Rick Sigelkow said this. I said, yeah, I'm gonna look. I couldn't find it. I really could not find it. All I know is that he said it wasn't Ringo, which is weird because here's Ringo. So yeah, immediately disproving the female narration. Now, I'm gonna bust out my old production guide here and say what it says to this pilot. They shot the pilot in April, and yeah, that lines up obviously with the video. It says everything seen in the illustrations were required for the pilot, however, that illustrations are not camera angles. This holds up. The Down the Mine pilot script was finalized by February 14th, and shooting for it began on April 18th for 10 days, allowing 5 days in betweeners. In May, they analyzed and researched the pilot to see how to improve the final series, which was actually being worked on according to this log. I looked over the script for this pilot as well and found that it was quite similar to the narration we got. Overall, despite our big game of telephone across these past few years, this production log is the most accurate description of what we got. Now, if only all pieces of lost media had a production log to follow. I discussed this image in detail when I received it from an anonymous source, and I fully believe it is the only surviving proof of the shot of Thomas going under the bridge. I was kinda disappointed to not see it in the pilot. I was gonna be like, oh look, there it is! But I honestly believe that the originals were way too decayed or just lost at some point, which is really fascinating. Really though, this search was something magical. I got to talk to so many people who made my childhood what it was, and it was an honor to talk to Britt Allcroft before she unfortunately passed away. This series is beloved by tons of people all around the world, and I hope that this pilot gets the love and recognition it deserves, because so many good and wonderful people put their hearts into it just to make this little blue tank engine, just to make sure he got it to the small screen, and heck, even the big screen eventually. I can't believe this search is over. Not found by some crazy leak or some sad ending where it's rotting in a storage. No, I can't believe that this is over because the crew today wanted to give back to the fans. To Ian McHugh, thank you. Britt Allcroft, David Mitten, thank you. Wilbert and Chris Audrey, thank you. And to you at home, who helped make Thomas and his friends so popular around the world, thank you. Now, I'd like to take some time to talk about why this is such an important find. Something I see a lot is, why do you cover kids show lost media? It's a topic that gets discussed at least 3 times a month in this lost media community. How, for some reason, people take issue with it, and I'm here to yap about why this piece of found media isn't necessarily in that category. So let me explain. This is just going to be one big yap fest. This isn't something important to me because it's nostalgic or a kid show or whatever. It's important to me because it's important to media production in general. You see, the context to the creation of this pilot is amazing, and the history behind it always brings an appreciation to the craft that transcends, oh, this is just kid stuff. The Railway series went out of its way to make things feel very real, all while telling moral life lessons to audiences young and old, and I think that's why it sold so well, because it was popular with both adults and children. It had these fun, charming stories about characters who would get themselves into trouble for being vain or cheeky, but it also grounded in reality that real-world events would run parallel to these stories. There's a mention of nationalization in the foreword to James the Red Engine, an event in UK where railway companies were all nationalized to become British Railways. The scrapping of steam engines across the network became a pivotal piece in the stories and for later books. Needless to say, this property attracted many people and became famous worldwide for these reasons. So it was only natural, with the mainstream direction of television, many would try to adapt these books for the small screen. Of course, many of these endeavors failed, and it wasn't until Britt Allcroft came along that these stories found themselves on television, albeit under a different name, Thomas the Tank Engine and Friends. Britt Allcroft and the folks at Clearwater put so much love and effort into this pilot, resulting in Thomas becoming an even bigger worldwide sensation that many grew up with and many are still growing up with today. This pilot took so much love to make, and it consisted of a rich history involving talking steam engines on a far-off island, and made it into a huge sensation to which people still think of Thomas when they see a steam engine. That's why this pilot is important. Not because it's kids show stuff, but because it pretty much revolutionized kids show content in television history. So, happy 80 years to the Railway series. Without the books, without this pilot, I wouldn't have had such a rich childhood, and neither would millions around the world. So yeah, the Thomas pilot has been released. I really wish this video could have been out sooner, like way sooner, but it was kind of hard to articulate my words for this. As you heard, I was stumbling a lot. I want to thank my good friend and fellow searcher Click Clack Track for proofreading my script and correcting my inconsistencies. I want to thank fellow searcher Nick Starwin for getting me started with all this stuff. I want to thank you all who have stuck around with me through the search. It's been a wild ride, and even though it was more of a release than a find, it was still a fun journey. I want to thank Wilbert Audrey, Chris Audrey, Britt Allcroft, David Mitten, Christopher Knowlton, Ian McHugh, and all the folks at Clearwater and Mattel who made this happen. And most of all, thank you individually. Thank you for being yourself and being here and being so amazing. I should have some stuff coming out soon, more stuff coming down the pipeline. I really hope you'll enjoy it all. This is the last thank you, I promise, but thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like and tell me what you think in the comments below. If you're interested in more of my content, consider subscribing. It's free, and you can be notified of my next upload by clicking the bell icon. I'm on Bluesky now. I think I've mentioned that a few times. That's pretty much the only social platform I'm on now, because I don't like using the Funny Bird app, the Funny Letter app now. I do update on the community tab sometimes, so, if you're really that interested in me, you can find me. Anyways, guys, it's been a blast, and I will see you all in the next one. Peace! I did the intro wrong. It's supposed to say I will see you all next time. It says it in the script. I didn't say it. If you're still watching, what are you doing? Get off. Go. Now. Bye!